Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCSL Dynasty here on NCAA 14, and also featuring that college football revamp as well. We find ourselves here in the second to last week of the regular season already, and it's been a fun season for sure. But now we really get ourselves down to business as multiple key races do come to a head here in this NCSL series. Key matchups around the country that could very well determine who get those automatic bids into the college football playoff, who makes it to the conference championship game in the first place, and then on top of all that, we got opportunities to be an at-large qualifier for the National College Football Playoff. These are all things that are in store for us here today, and I just hope that you're excited for that whole dang thing, because man, I certainly am. I think we're going to be in for a good one. If you're excited about this episode as well, make sure you go ahead and smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. Let's go ahead and dive onto these football fields around the country. Let's go.
So let's go ahead and get our very first game of the day officially underway. And we start with the undefeated Michigan Wolverines taking on the Hawkeyes of Iowa. Iowa looking to play spoiler as they are unranked, and so they're not playing for an at-large bid. They're out of the race for that conference title as well. So just trying to play spoiler, maybe trying to prevent Michigan, create a harder path for them to get into the playoff on their own. We'll see if Iowa can do just as. We jump to about 120 left here in the first half. A very low-scoring game, an Iowa-type game, if you will. And all of a sudden, we see Iowa use that O word. Yes, Iowa has an offense in this game after all. Iowa's going to drop back, throw over the middle to their receiver. That is Todd Parker picking up 17. And so Iowa is going to find themselves in the red zone here. 1:03 left to play. He drops back one more time, finds his man, Kyle Wall, and he will break the wall on this end zone. Touchdown, Hawkeyes. And so Iowa's going to take a lead here. But doesn't leave too much time for the Michigan Wolverines of their own. They have a minute left. They also have all of their timeouts, and that's not a bad way to start this drive at all. A 25-yard gain on the play that sends him in across Iowa territory. And then, of course, you see this receiver go to work. Oh, my. Brett Dawson, a certified bad man, gets the Wolverines in the red zone, looking for points of their own. Firing over the right-hand side. It's Brett Dawson again. Touchdown, Wolverines. And Michigan takes the lead here in the big house. And they might not be looking back either, as we'll see Michigan start to pull away here in the second half. So late third quarter drive becomes absolutely crucial if Iowa does want to remain in the game, and it's not looking good. Junior Blaylock gets a nice carry on the read option. So now looking down a goal line situation, looking over the middle, and finds TJ Graham in the end zone yet again. Another touchdown for the Wolverines. For Iowa, it might be barbecue chicken, or at least so we thought, but Iowa's offense wakes back up here finally in this fourth quarter of action. They get themselves down to the red zone. First time since before the end of the first half. They have been down bad here in these third and fourth quarters, but they're starting to respond here. Clawing back into the deficit, firing over the right-hand side. It's caught by Kyle Wall. And all of a sudden, it's just a one-score game. Can Michigan close the door, or are they going to choke it away? But Sean Johnson makes a big-time play over the middle, and Junior Blaylock has his fourth passing touchdown of the day. He has been on fire. It also doesn't help that they give up the two-point conversion as well. But Iowa does get a quick score. They even get a free and out. So Iowa, even with the heroics of Junior Blaylock, has a chance to send this game into overtime. Dropping back, Michigan sending the blitz, firing over the right hand side. It's intercepted. The only turnover that you will see in this game, and it's barbecue chicken. Michigan will remain undefeated, and they will be making their way to the Big Ten Championship as such. So with that being said, we got a couple of more games happening now in the 12:30 time slot. The biggest being Clemson and Virginia Tech. Winner of that game does end up going to the ACC Championship. But for now, we'll check in on another nationally televised game. Florida taking on UCF. Florida trying to pad that resume, trying to avoid that bad loss, so they can go to their Florida State contest next week, ranked in the top 25, and it'll be a full highlights type game. But UCF is looking to play spoiler, and dare I say it, is Florida falling into the trap outside of their own swamp? It's a big time question, as it looks like Florida might be looking ahead a little bit too much, because UCF, well, them boys came to play today, as UCF has a chance to make this a 14-3 lead, and they do it. UCF takes a double-digit lead on the Florida Gators. The upset alert, well, that's officially on right here in Orlando, Florida. The bounce house is rocking. 2 minutes left in the first half, though, as Florida hands it off to Eric Boyd, who does pick up 7 and gets them right down by the goal line, where Florida will utilize its power I formation and get Eric Boyd into the end zone. The Gators pull to within just 4. So 1:18 left here in the first half, as UCF has a chance to add more points onto the board. That is a dot to Matt Evans, as UCF's team is starting to grow up right in front of our eyes. They looked like a poverty program, but they're not playing like it today. Although that interception, I mean, we got to attribute that to that announcer's jinx. Florida doesn't do anything with it, though. So UCF will retain the lead into halftime. And UCF, there's a real chance that UCF can actually win this thing. I mean, like, they're up by 11. We're basically in the final quarter already. I mean, this would certainly be a shocker if UCF can hang on and win this thing. As now, Cator is going to drop back. He's going to dump it off to Eric Boyd, who does pick up the first down for the Florida Gators. So goal line situation upcoming, as Cator is going to drop back into shotgun. It's a read option, and Octavian Cator, one of your guys' customs, just so effective at it. Absolutely effective at that read option. One of the more dynamic quarterbacks in the SEC. And we'll see if he uses his legs again for the 2-point conversion, but it will not be necessary, as he throws a dot to the corner. Allows Florida to take a brief lead, but with 4 seconds left to play, UCF drives down the length of the field and hits the short game-winning field goal. And it's gonna be final here in the bounce house. UCF pulls the upset off against the Gators of Florida after all. So how about that for a big-time shocker? So that could open up a spot in the top 25. Maybe Virginia Tech could finally get some love if they can win here today. They really should be ranked already 9-2. They went to the playoff last year. I mean, like, what does Virginia Tech need to prove at this point? It's absolutely asinine that they're not even ranked right now. But they can win this game against Clemson. They can do exactly that. Get some respect in the national polls, and also find themselves here in the ACC Championship game. Could be hosting the ACC Championship game as well, with the divisional formats from NCAA 14. Hopefully that's not a thing in EA college football, but Clemson is going to take a brief lead, and they actually do extend the lead out 21-10. So the Hokies facing some adversity, as this crowd is a little bit quiet with those 14 unanswered points. But now Virginia Tech putting together a drive of their own, as Alvarez is going to find the end zone. Touchdown, Hokies. We'll see if they decide to go for the 2-point conversion or not, and they choose not to. So, 7-point game here after the Clemson field goal. Alvarez is going to find his man wide but naked open. It's Danny Simpson in the end zone. Touchdown, Hokies. And we got a tie ball game going into the half, and we still have that tie ball game deep into the third quarter. Remember, whoever wins goes to the ACC championship, so everything on the line, especially when those automatic bids come into play as well. And it looks like Virginia Tech is the one that wants to go a little bit more. Alvarez looking for the nail in the coffin as he takes his Hokies down inside the 10-yard line. We'll see if the Hokies can put that nail in the coffin. First and goal for the Hokies as Alvarez drops back. He's got some time. Looks over the middle of the field and finds his receiver. A big day for Jordan Alvarez. Well over 400 yards at this point. So I imagine he'll go to his passing arm again. Alvarez looking left. Has an open Bruce Griffin in the outlet. And that is a touchdown for Virginia Tech. And you know what? Just for some style points, Alvarez is going to score another touchdown. 4 touchdown passes for Jonathan Alvarez. A big time day for the Hokies quarterback, as he'll be taking the Hokies to the ACC championship. But we got some other studio updates around the country as San Diego State will secure bowl eligibility with a 30-24 victory. But with that being said as well, we are going to go ahead and jump into what we have going on throughout the country. 8 games going on at the 1 o'clock slot. It's going to be the busiest time of the year. That's just those beautiful thing about these conference championship races. Washington looking to improve their position going into the Pac-12 championship, but Oregon looking to play spoiler. Oregon having a decent season, not a good season, but a decent season with the new offensive coordinator Remy Natalius, who is one of your guys' customs. He came from Wyoming this past offseason. Could get some head coaching gloves depending on what happens here in the final weeks of the regular season, and of course the postseason as well, as Oregon finds itself down 10-7, but finds Chris Moore on the curl pattern, on the deep curl pattern, I should say. And so Oregon in a goal line situation and finishes the job. Touchdown, Oregon. And Thomas Gibson will give the Ducks the lead against the number 9 team in the nation. Washington tried its best to respond, but they end up going 3 and out themselves, so they have to punt this football away. And if I'm showing a punt, someone special is about to go down. Breaks a tackle down the sidelines. Got a corner. Gets brought down by the last line of defense, but Tyler Smith with a 39-yard return. And Oregon is in serious business. They do not have any timeouts, though. So Gibson's going to go in the gun with 5 wide out on the field. Throws to the right-hand side and finds John Nelson for the first down. And also getting out of bounds as well. So inside the 15-yard line and finds Chad McKenzie in the end zone. Touchdown, Oregon. Remy Natalius got this offense humming, and it's one of those teams that has gotten better as the year has gone on. Oregon pulls a big-time upset against Washington. Meanwhile, the Troy Trojans are looking to become bowl eligible for the first time in this series here in year number 4. And they're taking on Alabama. Now, Alabama has fallen on some harder times. Alabama coming in 6-4. Definitely below expectations for those that have lived under those days of the Nick Saban regime. They're far and away from that now, as J.D. Weeks has his offense inside the 15-yard line, looking to take the lead against the vaunted Crimson Tide defense. Second and goal coming up as Troy is going to drive itself down by the goal line. It's going to pitch it out to Kevin Oliver, and Kevin Oliver is going to find the end zone. Touchdown, Troy! And so the Troy Trojans do indeed have the lead against the Alabama Crimson Tide. However, this offense is looking to change that real quickly as Troy is really struggling with that tackling there on that particular play. What should have been maybe like a 15 to 20 yard play ended up going 30 for 35, around that amount. So you hate to see it. You absolutely do hate to see it. As now Alabama, golden opportunity for the Crimson Tide to take the lead. And they will do exactly that. Touchdown, Alabama. And so Troy will find itself down by a field goal. But Troy is doing a good job of working the clock and just getting those key first downs when possible. That's been the strategy for Troy in this particular game because, I mean, they know that they can't really compete with the athletes that Alabama does have on the other side. And so far, it's actually working. It's actually working extremely well. Troy has a chance to retake the lead here with 2 minutes left to play in the third quarter, and they will with Greg Jenkins. Touchdown, Troy. And so Troy is now up 21 to 17. As now Alabama here in the fourth quarter looking to win this game, trying to win it in regulation. But with 6:35 left to play, Troy is going to hit this little 36-yard field goal attempt. And yeah, that is actually the last scoring that we'll see in regulation. So we are indeed going to overtime. So we'll see what Troy can do. They are the first to have overtime. And Greg Jenkins throws across his body. What is he looking at? What is he legitimately looking at? Tyrell Campbell with the interception. And now if Alabama can hit this field goal, it's going to be over. Alabama will win their 7th game of the season. The kick is up, and it's no good. It might have been partially blocked. I'm not too terribly sure. But what I do know is that we have a second overtime on our hands. As we'll see Brashard try to throw one up towards the end zone. He had him, and wait a minute, he's going to take this out. Is he going to go all the way? I think he could. One more man to beat. He does. It's going to be over. There's no flags on the field. There still isn't a flag on the field. I can't believe my eyes. Joseph Holycross took it within deep in his own end zone. And it does set an NCAA record for most longest interception in history. And Troy is going to use that to beat Alabama, which means the Troy Trojans, for the first time in 4 years, will be bowling. But there is more happening out in the southeastern part of the country as North Carolina travels to take on Eastern Carolina. Now, ECU needs this win to be have any chance of being bowl eligible. But as a bonus to that as well, Eastern Carolina, well, they're also in the hunt for the ACC championship. Their division is much weaker than the division that Clemson and Virginia Tech, and to a lesser degree, Wake Forest too, that is also in. So, basically a chance to go to the ACC championship on the line, and North Carolina is going to make quick work of the Pirates. North Carolina is going to win big here, 44-7. So we'll likely see the Tar Heels in the ACC championship. However, out in the Bayou, LSU taking on their in-state opponent and those Raging Cajuns. The Raging Cajuns also looking to win in order to ensure that they stay alive for bowl eligibility. LSU needing this win as well if they want to keep pace with Arkansas. Arkansas undefeated in Sun Belt Conference play. LSU's only loss, I believe, is also in conference play as well. So loss here would grant Arkansas the opportunity to go to the Sun Belt Championship. So they're pulling hard for the Raging Cajuns, who do get an interception to keep it a one-score game. And here we are in the fourth quarter. The Raging Cajuns, you know, they turned it into a rock fight. They're still in this thing. Goal line situation for the Raging Cajuns. So as they'll look towards the corner of the end zone, it's caught by Lee Goddard, who's going to get those 10 toes down. A touchdown for the Raging Cajuns. They'll also go for the 2-point conversion, and that is successful as well. So a tie ball game here at 14 apiece. As now we get to within 3 minutes left in the game as another dot is thrown. This time to Andrew Nance. And the Ragin' Cajuns are possibly just one stop away from pulling a big-time upset of their own. LSU has to score on this drive, and this is a great start as LSU is going to set up beautifully. A tough day for the LSU offense, who's been held to under 400 yards today, but they start across midfield though. LSU going to scramble with Derek Brown, and Derek Brown's going to get across the 40-yard line. A 12-yard run on that play makes it 3rd and 4. Inside the 30-yard line as they'll hand it off to their tailbacks. Going to try to cut it outside. Runs through a couple of defenders as Aaron Gunn is going to gun it for a first down. Setting up the Tigers just outside of the red zone. Gunn again getting another carry. No, it's Mark Palmer, excuse me. But he's not going to excuse himself from that run as Derek Brown's going to find the end zone late in the game. And LSU is going to force overtime after all. So here we are in the overtime period after the Cajuns fail to stop the LSU Tigers. First overtime underway as they try to throw towards the end zone, but DB gets over in the nick of time, and that's the only turnover for the Ragin' Cajuns, one that could prove to be extremely costly, as now LSU, they only need a field goal if they want to win this game. So I imagine they will not try to put it in harm's way. They're going to just call a screen instead, and whatever happens, happens. And you know what ends up happening? LSU wins on that particular screen, and the Tigers will have a date with Arkansas next week to decide who goes to the Sun Belt Championship. Meanwhile, the Miami Hurricanes, they have already clinched their way to the SEC title game, where they will likely see the Georgia Bulldogs, unless Georgia somehow loses later on in this episode. We'll see them in a little bit, but Miami is looking to try to keep themselves in the hunt for that #1 overall seed, as they are one of 4 undefeated teams left in the country, as Miami is going to hand it off to its running back, Sean Campbell, and Sean Campbell's going to find the end zone. Touchdown, Hurricanes. But USF is hanging tough in their slime green jerseys. It's a still one-possession game going into the second quarter. However, that will quickly change as Rodney Walker will end up throwing his second passing touchdown of the afternoon. The rain here in Tampa, Florida, clearly having no effect on this Miami passing game. They're used to that borderline hurricane weather. But here we are in the fourth quarter, though. USF trying to make things a little bit interesting here. A touchdown, of course, would make this a one-possession game. So here we are, a few plays later, 2nd and goal. Looking over to the right-hand side. It's caught for a touchdown by Jay Jackson. But for Pat Bush, it represents so much more. The FCS transfer is going to have his 29th passing touchdown of the year. That does set a new school record set by Brandon Williams, who was just a starter last year. But they opted to go for 2, and it didn't work. And that was as close as USF was going to get in that ball game. Meanwhile, we had ourselves out west, where we'll see Washington State taking on Oregon State, the only 2 teams left in the modern Pac-12. But, you know, in this universe, you know, Pac-12 is alive and well. You know, gets us away from this dystopian timeline that we do have with conference realignment in real life real quick. Oregon State wins. If they win this game, you know, they will become bowl eligible, and they'll carry some momentum before we go to that Civil War game matchup against Oregon. We will definitely see that in the next episode. Washington State, on the other hand, they are looking to play that spoiler role. Looking to take down Oregon State. A little bit of a rivalry game, I would say, in the proximity between these 2 schools, Oregon and Washington, as Oregon State actually finds itself down by a field goal. A very close game here in the first half, but the Beavers look to dam up the lead as Oregon State's going to throw over to the left-hand side. Not sure if that was in the end zone, but they are going to give it to Jamal Palmer, nonetheless. So Oregon State actually takes the lead off of that. Imagine that. A lead for Oregon State. Let's see if they can build on that dam, though. 3rd and long coming up for the Oregon State Beavers, as we'll see this quarterback drop back. Looks over the middle. Finds Jamal Palmer. It's short of the 1st down, but gonna risk it for the biscuit, though. They're actually gonna go for it, and beautiful decision there, just trusting that running game. Daryl Sanders getting raw dogged out there. They are using him a lot here in this first half. He is closing in on 30 carries already in this first half, but he's just continuing to run over Washington State defenders. So it's working, all things considered. It is definitely working. What's not working, though, is the Washington State running game, as they end up with a turnover of their own. So we jump into the second half here as Washington State finds itself down by 11. However, they will get closer to evening it up. Ricky Hall finds the end zone, but they end up going on quite a bit of a run after that, and we see Oregon State down by 6 with less than 3 minutes left to play here in this ball game. Can Oregon State put together a 2-minute drill and get victory from the jaws of defeat? And oh, if Troy Ford could have kept his feet in bounds, he was going to be gone like a girl in a country song. Instead, Oregon State still has some work that needs to be done. Thankfully, they still have 3 of their timeouts that they have to work through, and Daryl Sanders is going to deliver. He's been the MVP of the Oregon State offense today, and he continues to be that man. Oregon State has the lead, but less than a minute left to play. Washington State dropping back, going to run out of time, puts the ball on the ground. It's recovered by Oregon State, and the freshman Leroy Mitchell is gonna call game. Touchdown Oregon State, and the Beavers will be going bowling, taking down their rivals up north. However, that being said, Notre Dame, arguably one of the most disappointing teams in the nation this year. Well, they find themselves on the road, and they are taking on Marshall. Marshall having their senior day activities after all, as this is going to be their final home game of the season, final game of the year, period, because Marshall will be not going to a bowl game. But if they can beat Notre Dame, they can at least stop their fellow conference opponent from also going to a bowl game as well. So still some incentive for Marshall to play hard, even though they know that they're not going to have another game to play in after this. And so far, Marshall came to play. Marshall, doesn't have the same caliber of player as Notre Dame has, but Notre Dame playing some good ball nonetheless, as Notre Dame will make it a 21-14 lead. I just burped that sexy. So speaking of things that are sexy, how about a touchdown run by your quarterback, Mike Matthews? Mike Matthews finding the end zone as well for the Thundering Herd. And it's a tie ball game, and it's an exciting first half as well. However, Greg Hunt now has the ball in his hands once again, and we'll see if he can lead yet another touchdown drive. 1st and 10 from about the 50-yard line as Greg Hunt finds himself in the shotgun. 5 wide set. It's just going to go ahead and scramble upfield. No quarterback spy either, so it's an easy 17 yards for Greg Hunt, and saves those timeouts as well. 3 timeouts left to work through, and Hunt's just going to scramble again. I mean, if they're not going to put a QB spy on this guy, I mean, I would take those yards too. That's just too easy. We'll see if he can make it easy down by the goal line as well, as the quarterback draw keeps him on his feet, and Greg Hunt will find the end zone. Touchdown, Fighting Irish, and they will take a 28-21 lead. With that being said, we get into the second half finally. A very exciting first half, might I add, but still a 7-point game nonetheless. And that's not how you want to start your second half. Get down by the goal line, you do all of that work, and then you take a big sack like that. So this is a 2nd and 15 essentially, not what you want to see, as he puts the ball on the ground. Now it's a foot race. Can the running back bring him down? No. but he at least does get some help. Tough break for the Thundering Herd, who could have came away and got some points there. Doesn't happen at all. So Marshall has to wait for another time to find the end zone, and this time they will capitalize on that particular opportunity. Mike Matters will keep it himself this time, and he will score. Marshall also gets a field goal later in that fourth quarter as well, so Notre Dame finds itself down by a few points, and that does mean that Notre Dame needs to score themselves to at least force overtime. Second and goal coming up as Greg Hunt faces some pressure, but calmly does end up finding Ben Bentley, and Ben Bentley will give Notre Dame the lead. But 2 minutes left to play, and that is a lot in college football, because remember, every time you do end up picking up that first down, it does briefly stop the clock. So something to seriously keep an eye on, as Marshall will drop back again and will pick up yet another first down. This time it's Tremaine Washington, as now Tremaine Washington gives the Thundering Herd to about midfield. Good start for the Marshall. And that is the dot to Ryan Smith, who gets him inside the 30-yard line as well. 1 minute left to play. Matthews fires over the middle, and it's caught. First down for the Thundering Herd, and that provides a red zone opportunity. Can Marshall pull it off against Notre Dame and get Notre Dame out of bowl eligibility? No! Notre Dame might have had their linebacker save their season, as Mark King is going to get in front of that particular pass, and so Notre Dame's bowl hopes will still remain alive, but just by a thread though. That being said, we now check in real fast on West Virginia taking on Illinois. West Virginia is in the hunt for that MAC championship title. It's a 3-team race over in that part of the conference. The Great Lakes division has been a joy to watch over the course of this year. Illinois needs this win in order to remain alive. They did just lose to Northern Illinois last week. That's how they fell outside of the top 25. However, West Virginia, you know, they are just out here. They are standing on business right now. They are not messing around. They are not playing games. And West Virginia is taking on Northern Illinois next week in the next episode. And West Virginia is sending a message to that Huskies team is, look how you struggle with this squad in your home, and yet here we are in their building, and besides a couple of turnovers, West Virginia does end up dominating the Fighting Illini as the Mountaineers set up a date with destiny against the NIU Huskies next episode. But we do have a couple of studio updates as Memphis takes on Arkansas State. Memphis wins, and now Arkansas State will be in a must-win in order to be bowl eligible. Also, to keep an eye on, whoa! Ole Miss goes down! The number 7 team in the nation loses to Southern Miss, and that is going to shake things up big time in the top 25 when that does come out later on in the episode. So keep an eye and stick around for that. But we now have one of the biggest games of the season. USC taking on the defending national champions, the UCLA Bruins. And UCLA's playoff hopes are hanging on by a thread right now. They already lost 3 games. They are tough losses, don't get me wrong, but they can't afford to lose a 4th game. Hawaii is already ahead of them in the AP polls right now. And so, if they drop this game, UCLA, we will not see them in the playoff, and we will have a new national champion. So, a lot at stake for UCLA, and of course, there's plenty at stake for USC as well. They do hold on to that number 1 overall seed, so that does matter too. But UCLA's defense is going to come to play. First drive of the game makes just an incredible play on the ball. I mean, yes, it's going to count as an interception for Victor Spence, but you can't blame this on him. I mean, Paul Washington just makes an incredible play on the ball. You know, stuck with it there. Good instincts. and he takes it all the way into the end zone, finishes the play. Touchdown, Bruins. So they're going to need some of that because UCLA's offense under the backup quarterback Kobayashi has not been what you would hope for from somebody that was a 5-star quarterback in the previous recruiting class. And USC is finally able to solve this defense. Victor Spence gets some time in the pocket and is going to throw a dot down the sideline. So that will get USC officially up on the scoreboard. But they still find themselves down 10-7 after a field goal. However, Victor Spence gets time to load it up yet again. Finds Myron Jones yet again. And it's going to be another big play that sets up USC down by the goal line, where Victor Spence is able to carry it in himself. Touchdown, Trojans! And USC will have a bigger lead on its hands. 14-10 will be your score at the half. Now jumping into the third quarter of action here, as Victor Spence was come out strong here in the second half. This is their first drive of the game. UCLA had a chance with the ball, and they ended up having to go ahead and punt the ball away. But USC putting together a steady drive, though. That steady drive takes them down by the goal line, where once again they use the legs of Victor Spence. And Victor Spence is going to have his third overall touchdown of the afternoon against their rivals down the street. So, good ball there for Victor Spence. And the defense just going to handle the rest here. They were all over Kenji Kobayashi all day long in this particular game. He hardly had some room to breathe. And it's definitely prevalent when you get into these obvious passing situations where you're down by double digits. You got less than 2 minutes left in the game. Kobayashi gets hit again, and this time a USC player is going to fall on the ball. Kobayashi, you know, he is going to be fine. He is going to absolutely be fine. He wasn't supposed to start this year. Injuries at the quarterback position did force him into duty, but it does mean that UCLA will be knocked out of playoff consideration. They should still be in a solid bowl game, but it's probably not what they wanted at all. However, what we do want is that big-time matchup between Rice and Texas. That could have a classic on our hands. But first, we're going to head up to Lansing, Michigan to check up on Indiana and Michigan State. They're getting ready to go at a little bit of a appetizer, you know, to get the juices flowing before that Rice-Texas game. And it's also a chance to check on one of your guys' custom coaches in Dalton Barrettine, who somehow was retained on the staff, even though the rest of the coaches got fired last year after Indiana did end up going 0-12. And it seemed like a good decision because Dalton Barrettine, he's a nice offensive line. He has a nice offensive mind, but at the same time, you know, doesn't always have, you know, the best bodies out there at Indiana, right? But this Indiana team is playing well. They're playing extremely well. They're going to get the interception. This could be turned back to the distance, and after breaking away from that quarterback, he's gone. He is going to be gone like a girl in a country song. So Indiana takes a 17-7 lead, and they're not even done in this first half at all. They're not close to being done, because then Indiana gets another red zone opportunity before we even go into the halftime locker room, and the Hoosiers are going to cash on in. Touchdown, Indiana, as Brent Engel is going to find the end zone for the Hoosiers. So that now makes it 24-7. And with Indiana being 3-7 and Michigan State being where they're at, I was thinking that this was going to be a close game with leaning towards Michigan State winning. But not only is Indiana actually in the lead, oh no, Indiana is dominating Michigan State. This is absolutely a surprising result for me right now, as late in the third quarter, Chris Struggs, he's going to look over the middle, and he finds his tight end, Brennan Jackson, who does end up getting shaken up. So hopefully that's not too serious of an injury. But sometimes your seasons don't end with a bang. Other times, they end in a whimper. Michigan State loses big, and they will no longer be bowl eligible at all.
Indiana plays spoiler. But now a big time game out in the Big 12, as whoever wins this game is going to control their destiny. Winner of this game is going to host the Big 12 championship. Here's the standings for the Alamo division. It's been a fun to watch conference so far down south, and it's going to continue. First drive for Texas. Backup quarterback is in because the starter is hurt. Jason Adames is hurt, so he will not be playing in this game. Texas is going to strike first regardless, though, as Carl Magnum is going to run over a corner. So Rice is going to be down 7-0, but this Texas Longhorns team is going to find out quickly. You do not play with food. Don't do it. Rice is going to score as well, and food is going to be tied up against the Texas Longhorns in this one. Later on in the first quarter, though, as Carl Magnum will drop back, he's going to try to throw a dot towards the end zone, and it's caught. Austin Tyler finds the end zone. Touchdown, Longhorns. And so I hope you got your spikes out for this one, because we got ourselves a track meet on our hands, because it looks like two heavyweight boxers that are going toe to toe to toe, constantly answering the bell set from each individual team. So already 14 all, so certainly a different vibe than what we saw from that USC-UCLA game. Carl Magnum with a nasty stiff arm, and this is why Texas fans were so excited about this kid when he came on the campus, because he can do stuff like that. The passing ability is going to come along eventually, but oh baby, does he run like a bat out of hell. Touchdown, Texas, and the Longhorns once again have the lead. Very next drive for the Rice Owls, though, as they'll get their wide receiver involved. Hold up now. He has an open lane as well, and he's going to take it the distance. Touchdown, Rice. It's Marcus Cummings. Marcus Cummings is going to go all over the Texas secondary. Pause. And Rice is going to tie it up once again. Oh my goodness, did that quarterback take a shot, though. Wesley, such a tough kid, going downfield and wanting to celebrate with his teammates in real time. But 3 minutes left to play in the second quarter. Magnum's going to drop back, looks over the middle, and finds Mark Kelly in the end zone. Another touchdown for the Longhorns. Carl Magnum has not passed the ball very much today. But when he does, though, oh baby, can he make some things shake in the passing game as well? He's growing as a passer right in front of our eyes. But this defense is just having a hard time getting Rice off the field now, aren't they? So 2 minutes left to play here in this first half, and Rice is going to score again. Andre Falk is going to score for Rice, and it's knotted up again at 28 this time. Oh my goodness, we got a back and forth game like a tennis match. But with 45 seconds left to play in the first half, Texas is going to go to their tailback, who is going to follow his blocks. Lonnie Cameron finds the end zone. Touchdown, Texas. And the Longhorns will take a 35-28 lead into halftime. Now, while Rice did have a chance with the ball to start the second half, however, they did miss a field goal, though. So a missed opportunity for Rice. And if Texas is going to pull away, this is the play to do it. Carl Magnum with a big-time throw down the sideline. Just using all of those athletes that Texas has over there on the other side. You absolutely cannot go one-on-one against these Texas wide receivers, man. They are built different. But that doesn't mean Rice is going to give up. Not by any means. It's Adam Williams, the tight end. Yes, the tight end of all people is going to get a carry there. And so Texas is going to be only up 42-35. If Rice can somehow get a stop, you know, it could be anyone's ball game, right? But having a hard time doing that, aren't they? So Texas scores yet again. They're on the verge of a 50-burger.
but it makes you wonder if the 50 burger is even going to be enough, because Terry Wesley, he stiff arms a linebacker down, and Terry Wesley finds the end zone himself. Another touchdown for Rice. 5 minutes left to play, so there is plenty of time here. But oh baby, we got a barn burner here. They actually do get a stop against Texas, so they can score. It could be overtime, but instead, Terry Wesley does not get any protection on a 4th and short that was ultimately going to decide the game anyways. And Cedric Leonard is going to take it all the way. Touchdown, Texas. And the Longhorns do put up that 50 burger after all. Not only do they end up putting up the 50 burger, they end up winning against Rice. And that does mean that Texas not only will be going to the Big 12 championship, but depending on what happens on the other side, they might host too. Which is heartbreak for Rice, but we'll check on some other games around the country now, as Georgia Tech does beat Coastal Carolina. A little bit of a disappointing year for the Yellow Jackets, but they got a date with Georgia and carrying a little momentum with that win. However, Kansas State nearly pulls off a big-time upset against Minnesota, but the Golden Gophers do pull it out. They do need Nebraska to drop either one of their next 2 games, but Minnesota in a good spot to go to the playoff as an at-large. In other news, Central Michigan wins, and then Eastern Michigan also wins. A lot of mid happening here in this part of the country. Now, just a couple of games left, and like I said, we were going to watch Georgia. Well, here they are, the Georgia Bulldogs hosting Georgia Southern. Now, Georgia has already clinched a trip to the SEC Championship. It's just that million-dollar question is Miami coming to Athens, or is it going to be vice versa? They might need Miami to drop a game, because if it's a case where you do end up seeing what you got going on with both those teams, they both end up being undefeated, it might go to like the higher ranked team, and Miami is slightly higher ranked at the moment right now. We did see Miami, you know, not play their best game against USF, so maybe if Georgia can dominate, they could sneak in front of Miami that way. However, Georgia Southern look planning on other things right now, aren't they? Georgia Southern is ahead, so maybe we got to forget about those rankings real quick, and Georgia's actually got to go play this game and beat Georgia Southern, because these Eagles actually did come to play today. Don't let that record fool you. This is a solid football team. Moore is going to throw over the middle and finds his guy, Antonio Paris, and Antonio Paris will pick up that first down. As now, 1st and 10, Muir lines up under shotgun as he looks over to the left-hand side again. He's going to find his guy, who nearly picks up the first down there. It's a gain of 10 yards there. That's some little hiccup action there as well. As now it's going to leave to a 2nd and inches, where Muir is going to try to take on the read option. And how about 27 staying with the play? He gets stiff-armed into oblivion, but he doesn't give up on the play. He gets re-engaged and, you know, eventually brings Frederick Muir down. However, that will not ultimately matter, though, as Frederick Muir will lead to a tied ball game. So 14 all here as Georgia Southern looks to carry some momentum into halftime, as Georgia Southern will quickly get back up onto the line after they get that completion. However, a couple of plays later, as they try to throw over the middle, 57 lights him up, and Georgia is going to get a fumble out of this. They could take this all the way, and he does not. The Super Dive Chiefs saves a touchdown, both short and long term, as Georgia did have to go on and settle for a field goal. So for good effort by that tailback, preventing that guy from being able to get into the end zone there. So instead of 21-14, it ends up being 17-14 instead. That could come into handy down the line. I'm not foreshadowing or anything. Or am I? 6 minutes left here in the 4th quarter as Georgia Southern down by 16. But their wide receiver is going to get the jet sweep. And the Georgia defense looked like they never guarded a jet sweep before. Like, what are we actually doing here? Jet sweep ends up going for a touchdown, but the 2-point conversion does end up ultimately failing. So Georgia will still be up by 10, and with this red zone possession, they could still possibly come out and put this nail in the coffin. It'd still be a convincing win, but, you know, Georgia Southern, they hung around longer than expected. That might hurt them in their race to try to get past Miami, and that could mean Georgia might have to go to Miami for this SEC championship game. Not something that I'm sure they're not very interested in doing. They'll do it if they have to, but they're not going to want to do that at all. However, 37-20 is your score as Walter Holt's going to throw over the middle. He's got his guy. That's a touchdown for the Eagles as Buck Miller finally has a passing touchdown, but it won't be enough though, as Georgia will remain undefeated on the season. That being said, we'll close out the in-game action here in this episode with number 12 Nebraska going on the road to take on Missouri. The Missouri Tigers still kind of in the hunt for an American Conference title, but for those circumstances, this is going to be a must-win for Missouri. Nebraska, on the other hand, also could use this win. Minnesota could move ahead of them and ultimately secure that conference title game appearance if Nebraska cannot handle its business. And here we are in the first quarter, and Missouri will pull to within a possession. Weird things have always happened, especially late in the regular season, where the pressure just seems to mount up more effectively. That being said, though, Brian Robinson's going to hand it off to the tailback. And one comfort that Nebraska does have is they have one of the best running backs in the entire country. Tim Hayden, he is certified that guy, but they also have an experienced quarterback in Brian Robinson, who thankfully, and I mean thankfully, has been far healthier than what we saw back in year number 3, where it was just a constant rotation of quarterbacks for Nebraska last year. More continuity at the quarterback position, and we're really starting to see that show. George Gentry, the offensive coordinator here in Nebraska, has his guys humming right now, and depending on how things shake up the last few weeks, could be seeing George Gentry as a head coach somewhere. Certainly something to keep an eye on as the rest of this season does end up progressing. But man, Nebraska, they did not take Missouri lightly at all. They're going to be up 38-14, and for good measure, Robinson, he's going to run it in himself, untouched, and Brian Robinson will help the Cornhuskers dominate Missouri. There will be no such tomfoolery here for the Cornhuskers. But after that beatdown that we just saw from Nebraska, let's go and check out some of the other notable teams that might have played over the course of week 13, but didn't get a chance to watch. How about Northern Illinois handling their business against Northwestern? They win 38-24, so it does set up a showdown against West Virginia for the right to go to the MAC championship game, a big-time matchup in the final week of the regular season. As for the California Bears, they are going to keep their bull hopes alive for now, doing so by beating Syracuse 42-7, being that final score. Syracuse is still bowl eligible, but not carrying that much momentum as we start to inch closer to that postseason action. However, one team that is trying to carry that momentum is TCU. TCU on the verge of a double-digit win season, and they're doing it by using their defense for the most part, winning 27-3 against the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. Also, speaking of top 25 teams, how about Ohio? Yes, Ohio is ranked, ladies and gentlemen. The Ohio Bobcats beat Toledo 35-20. So for the first time in this series, I think we will see a ranked Ohio Bobcats team. Imagine that. Keeping it in the state of Ohio, though, is Ohio State. They beat Ohio and they also are going to beat Akron 31-0, which will seal Ohio State into that Big Ten championship game a couple of episodes from now. Meanwhile, Florida State keeps its at-large hopes alive for the college football playoff. They beat Florida Atlantic 42-17, but no worry for the Owls though, as they still can win next week in order to secure a trip into bowl season. They must win in their final game. However, Oklahoma will be the reason why Ohio gets into this top 25 though, as Oklahoma loses a shocker to SMU. The Mustangs win 38-28, and what this also does is keep SMU alive in that postseason hunt as well. Also looking to host their respective conference championship game, however, is the Black Knights of Army. Army wins 48-10 against Buffalo. Army looking like they're going to be hosting that Conference USA championship again. Buffalo, on the other hand, it has been a terrible conference season, and they have been eliminated from postseason considerations. But going into the final week of the regular season, this is what your top 25 is still currently looking like. We still have 4 undefeated teams remaining, but outside of that top 5, we do have some notable muscle movements. Hawaii, for example, they were on bye, but because of chaos around them, they did get to move up a couple of spots, as does Army. Nebraska, Ohio State, Northern Illinois also gets to move up a couple of spots. Arkansas is going to have a big matchup against LSU in order to decide that Bayou division to see who takes on Ole Miss for the Sun Belt Championship. Arkansas is up to number 13 in the country. West Virginia, they have a MAC showdown with NIU. They move up 5 spots to number 14 in the nation, a big time win against Illinois. Texas, meanwhile, Texas is all in for the Big 12 championship. Likely will get the host as well. It probably will play either TCU or Oklahoma. Ole Miss, on the other hand, Ole Miss looks like they are not going to be hosting the Sun Belt Championship after all. This is due to a shocking loss to Southern Miss. We saw that in the studio update. Plus, Washington, they also moved down 8 spots. They lose to Oregon. Oregon's still not ranked in the top 25. TCU does get into the top 20. They are now 9-2 on the year. And rounding out your group, you got Utah at 20. Wisconsin up 4 spots to number 21. Their regular season is over. UCLA down 7 spots. They lose to USC. I thought this was a little harsh because they did play the number 1 team competitively, but it is what it is. And of course, you got Ohio, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is ranked. You love to see it. And Clemson, who also retains its top 25 ranking as well. But we now close in on the final week of the regular season. And in this final week of the regular season, we have multiple games that are going to absolutely decide who ends up going to conference championship games and who decides who wins those automatic bids to go to the college football playoff at the end of the season. It's been an absolute joy here in year number 4, and I hope you've enjoyed the ride with me. If you have, make sure you go ahead and smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.